Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the CREST webinar. My name is Bill Giannone, and today's webinar is entitled Disaster Recovery, How to Survive the Surge. Again, for most of us around the country, going into Christmas, we were kind of winding down. Everybody was looking forward to a little bit of relaxation, time with friends and family, and in all honesty, even though we preach running through the finish line, most of us were kind of looking to take it easy. And unfortunately, for most of us, this is what happened since Christmas Day, or basically since Christmas Eve for most of the country. It seems like, according to the last numbers I saw, over 35 states had been affected and had been negatively affected by the Arctic blast that came down from Canada. I did hear a stat. I can't remember where exactly I heard it, but I did hear a stat that there were broken pipes, frozen pipes, or power outages in 35 different states in the continental United States, all because of that storm. Well, that makes this storm one of the largest single events in the history of the United States insurance market. So just understand that if you're in the middle of it, or if you're still dealing with it, this is something that's what I would call of epic proportions. So it's not something to treat very lightly. Of course, it happened at the worst possible time. For most of us, it hit Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. And the cycle this year was especially bad because with Christmas and New Year's falling on a Monday, you basically had a season of off days and reduced staff that started on the Friday before Christmas. So you had the Friday before Christmas, and basically all the way through Monday, January 2nd, those were either official off days, federal holidays, company holidays, or there were times when you were going to have a reduced staff to begin with, because a lot of people do take off around that time of the year. And we do our best to try to keep them from all taking off at the same time, but it is also very reasonable to expect that some people, including ourselves, would have that time off. So this could not have happened at a worse time for our companies to be able to respond in a way that was reflective of our true abilities. I know for just about all the companies that we work with at CREST who went through this, they were all suffering through a shortage of personnel and obviously an overabundance of phone calls. And now it's a very, very difficult thing to manage under any circumstance. It could happen, on a Tuesday in May, it could still be a very difficult circumstance. But given the additional mitigating factors of when it happened and the type of weekend it was and the way the cycle fell this year for when the holidays fell, all of that was really, really terrible. So the past 3 weeks have tested each one of us, sometimes to the breaking point. If you have managed and survived, congratulations. But for all of us, the hard part really begins now. I'm going to talk a little bit about the stuff you're going to face today. I'm not going to cover too much, if any, of what you went through the last 3 weeks. It's going to be, there's a time and a place for doing that postmortem and doing that review. And there's a time and a place for going through and planning for the next one, because there will be a next one. For some of us, that next one might be coming in the next couple of weeks. There's another Arctic blast predicted to be coming at the end of this month. But there's another time and place to do that. I want to talk about the immediacy, things you can do today to help you for today and to keep you from kind of spiraling out of control. And that's what I mean about the hard part. The first thing that we're dealing with today is we want to still get others on the list. And, this is one of my favorite scenes in the movies. And you'll see Beetlejuice looking up and he has his number, and it's unreasonable that we're going to get to his number. So you want to help as many people as you can. Selfishly, you want to sign more work and you want to earn more money. We all know that. You think the money is just sitting out there waiting to be picked up. All you need to do is bend over and pick it up, right? You've got a list. Some of us have a list of a couple of hundred people who still have yet to be responded to. Now, after 3 weeks, there's a really good chance most of those people don't need our services anymore. But believe it or not, there's going to be work that's going to be available for the next couple of months. There's people who had very, very severe damage to their homes. There's people who have mold issues in their homes right now. Those things don't just go away and they just don't disappear because we didn't get out there for 3 weeks. So this is a real issue. How do we balance that with everything else we have to do? Because the next important thing we have to do is we have to make sure we wrap up the surge work. Yes, for a lot of us, this surge was a Christmas present, but we have to make sure that all our work is buttoned up before we try to take on more of it. What does that mean? What does that look like when we're talking about wrapping up surge work? Well, it means number one, first and foremost, we have to make sure our documentation is completed and we know where our equipment is. The two biggest things that fail during a surge is we spend so much time trying to be responsive to the client that we lose our processes. The two most important factors in a process is documentation, because that guarantees we can get paid. And then the realistic reality of what is going on with our equipment. Where did we place everything? Believe it or not, you probably have 3 or 4 jobs right now where you just have no clue that it's even a job because you went and you signed up the job and you placed some stabilization equipment there and it has fallen through the cracks. So you need to go through that list of every single job that came in, every single lead that came in. I hope you guys kept track of all of that. Go through that list and make sure you can verify that you did not go to that client's home. Because if you did, there's a really good chance you've got some equipment there and you need to make sure that equipment is not only there, but you need to make sure you have the ability to get it back. So let's make sure we are going to be very, very careful about what we're going to do moving forward. Let's get our documentation in place. Let's know where our equipment is. Let's wrap up the existing surge work before we decide to take any on. Obviously, another huge issue for today is we have to do the invoicing and collecting. It's not enough to just write the invoice. Too many of us, and I've seen this for the last 13 years, every time there's a storm surge or a local cat, we are hell-bent on getting the work done. Then the next thing is, after it's all done, then we decide to invoice, but we don't put any effort into accurate invoicing, aggressive invoices, or our collections efforts. We've now got to start billing for the work we've done, and we've got to get this done so we can rake it in and make the hard work worth it. Here's a tip for you guys. As busy as you've been, what you just experienced is nothing compared to what adjusters are experiencing right now. Remember, in the 35 states, there could have been 20,000 restoration companies doing work there or more. Believe it or not, if you guys did 20 or 30 jobs, every adjuster you're dealing with on those 20 or 30 jobs probably has 200 or 300 claims. Because adjusters are dealing with claims not just from restoration companies, not just the work you get, but they're dealing with all sorts of other claims as well. You know, maybe there were automobiles that got damaged or things, you know, personal property that got damaged that you don't have any part of. Or maybe there's just a job where the homeowner fixed it themselves, but they still filed a claim. There's so much more work on the adjuster side right now. And because a lot of adjusters, especially at the higher end level, the $50,000 to $200,000 level, a lot of them cover territories. They could be in charge of 2 or 3 states. They're going to have hundreds, if not thousands of claims. You need to be very aggressive. You need to work very hard and very focused to make sure that you stay on top of your invoice to get your bill paid. Now, what's the best way to do that? For me, the best way to do that is to make sure that you have fully documented your bill. If you know this is a $7,000 job, but you can only prove 6,500, don't put 7,000 on. That $500 you're going to be chasing might cost you 3 additional months to get that rest of that money because you haven't documented it properly. And if it's not documented properly, it's going in a pile with all the rest. If it's documented perfectly and you could prove and justify every penny of your invoice, I've seen instances where adjusters will cut checks within 7 days. Now, that's not going to be the norm, but if you can get a third of your work paid for in 7 days, all your costs for this entire cat are going to be covered. And then everything else will be your gravy, will be your profit. That's why I'm saying in everything we're going to do from this point forward, we have to be seeing the big picture. We don't want to get caught up on every penny, and we don't want to get caught up on every single lead that came in. What's the big picture? Well, the big picture is this. Your company was on a path and it just took a huge detour. That path was, we're going to finish out the year. We're going to start the new year strong. And right now, you're probably still not able to answer the phones and get out to jobs today the way you were right before the surge happened. So guess what? It's about time right now to start getting back to normal operations. So instead of the road I just showed you, which was this detour, we have to make sure we get off the detour. We have to start getting back to normal operations, and we have to view it as a merge. We have to now take what we did and we have to put ourselves back into that straight arrow part, which was our process. How do we do that? Well, believe it or not, we're in the disaster recovery business. What your business just went through is a disaster. So you need to push that button right now, and you need to enact your own disaster recovery plan. That's what I'm calling the next 3 months. It's a disaster recovery plan. What does it look like? Well, it looks like every other disaster recovery plan. Let's look at this circle. Don't worry about the things on the inside, the business continuity pieces. Those things might not apply directly to everything we're going through today. But what does apply here, and it's 100% applicable to every one of our business, are the 3 important steps that every successful business recovery plan stresses. It is number 1, protect, number 2, sustain, and number 3, recover and resume. So we're going to cover each one of those. We're going to talk about what each one of those means to your business. Protect. The first thing you need to do from this point forward, from this morning forward, is you need to make sure that you don't make any decisions that are going to negatively impact your future. If you're a business that was properly staffed, don't go out and hire 10 new full-time employees because you still have 3 or 4 or even 10 or 20 of these surge jobs that you need to get done. Do not do that. That's going to give you an overhead, and it's going to put you in a position moving forward that's going to be very awkward for you. If these jobs go on for 3 months or more, now you're subjecting yourself to firing all these people, and then you're going to have to be subject to workers' compensation claims. You're going to be subject to unemployment claims, things that you just don't want to open yourself up to. So don't make a negative decision in that way. If you're going to continue responding, make sure that you choose clients based on the fact that they're going to help you. Don't choose them based on the fact of who came in first. I know that sounds cold and very crass, but when you're doing this, you should be picking clients as close to your existing client base as possible, or as close to your existing office. You don't want to be driving all over your territory to get to small little jobs. It's not worth your while. Remember, this money should be considered extra money. This isn't your base money that you're going to drive all over for. This is extra. You should have the flexibility to be able to decide what's good for you and what's not. Do not devote resources to get more surge work that you do not already have today. Don't go out and buy 100 air movers if you've been using the right number of air movers for the last 2 years. If you didn't need them on December 23rd, you don't need them now. You could always rent additional equipment. If you're having difficulty finding equipment, I can hook you up with 20 people who will drive to your location to bring equipment to you. Yes, it's going to be a cost to you, but remember, this is not your normal 70, 80% cost work. You shouldn't be making those kinds of profits on surge work. This is get in, get out, and get paid kind of work. This is your gravy. So remember, do not devote those kinds of resources. Number 2, sustain. Finish all of your current work and make sure you're fully documented. If you're not really doing everything right now to 100%, don't take on more work that you're going to be doing at 50, 60, or 70% effort. That's just throwing good money after bad at this point. Put your effort and emphasis on getting your projects that you're currently doing really, really buttoned down and well documented. You could always get in there and make things better, but you have to devote resources to that. Don't throw those resources at other new jobs. Like I said, consider what you've got now to be your entire surge workflow. If you don't sign another job up, you should still be extremely satisfied, because now you have to make sure you take these jobs and you get them over the finish line properly. If you don't have enough resources to do this, go get them today. I'm not talking about expending the money to hire or buy new equipment, but if you need help, go get temp help. If you need somebody to help you with invoicing, go get that person. Short-term solutions, not investments. Finally, recover and resume. It is so important that you have to get back to normal as soon as possible. Your biggest risk to your long-term success, your business plan, is happening right now. In these days and weeks after a surge, you might still be buried, but let's just look at it this way. The plumbers that are giving you work, they might not be buried. They might be back to normal. They might have done their supply of fixing the pipes that they wanted to fix. Now they're getting you their everyday losses that they're always referring to you all throughout the year. If you're not being responsive to those because you just can't, because you're so backed up from the surge, guess what's going to happen? They've got to take care of their clients. They're going to look elsewhere. So now you're putting the rest of your year, the next 11 months, at risk because you're not able to sustain your regular business operations. So it's so much stress has to be put on getting back to normal. Your future depends on this transition. Okay, I'm going to word it this way. Embrace the transition back to normal, but you have to be aware of what lies ahead. You have to go back to the routine. This is really hard. You know, this happens in a lot of different venues. I'm going to give a really weird analogy. If you take a guy who goes to the racetrack all the time and he bets $2 on every race, and he's just a normal $2 gambler, but if he makes a big score, let's say he wins $10,000 because he got really, really lucky, it's really hard for that guy sometimes to go back and bet $2 a race. He starts saying, well, now I've got a little bit of money. Why don't I leverage up? Why don't I use their profits? So he starts becoming a $10 bettor. The best thing for him to do would be go back to his routine, go back to being the $2 bettor, but it's really hard. You guys are going to face that same difficulty. You want to go back to being a $2 bettor, go back to your routine. It's going to be hard because there's a really good chance that you've done a lot of work in the last few weeks and you've kind of gotten addicted to doing those kinds of numbers, and you don't want to go back to normal, let's just say. You have to embrace the transition and you have to love the routine. But here's some of the things that lie ahead. Again, I'm laying it all out there for you guys. This is what's going to happen starting today if it hasn't happened already. Everyone in your company is wiped out from working so hard for so long. Look at it from their perspective. They worked through the holidays for you. They worked nights, they worked weekends, they worked holidays. They took some of the most precious time away from their families in some instances to give it to you. Okay, you should be aware of that, and you should be so thankful that you should be looking to give them some time off right now. They should be getting additional work. Everybody should get a week off, right? That's what they're going to feel because you cheated them out of all those days. Yes, it came at an expense. They probably made a real good score at the end of the year in their paychecks by working all those overtime hours. There's no denying that. But we're going to get into why sometimes just saying that is not enough. The other thing you're going to face is this is what they're going to say to you. You did great. Let's take it easy for a little while. Your staff's not idiots. They know how well you've done the past few weeks. They know you've probably done 3 months of work in the last 3 weeks. So their mindset is, well, we could take it easy for the rest of January and really just kind of wind back into things. And you're still way ahead of the game because we're still going to have February and March. and nothing's going to happen. They don't see big picture. They don't understand momentum. They don't understand marketing trends. So they're just looking at it this way that, oh, you made a score. All that money's going to come in and you're going to have like 3 January. So what's the big deal? Well, here's the problem. You know how important it is. So you're taking your foot from the gas, from the brake, and you want to put it on the gas again. You want to get back to regular business as soon as possible. You don't want that surge to be in place of regular business. You need regular business to still go on, to still pay the bills, to still keep the lights on, to still cover the insurance and the gas and the salaries, so that everything that you made on that surge is extra. For you guys, it's this needle right here. The surge could either be good, which means it somewhat replaced your normal work and maybe a little better, or it could be great. Putting your foot on the gas is going to make that needle go from good to great. But the problem is we're facing that reality of our workers wanting to slow down and wanting to put their foot on the brake. So now you have to ask the one simple question: what motivates you? We're going to talk about the motivation of your workers right now and why it's important that you have to take this holistic approach. You're going to have to take an all of the above approach and invest a lot of time and effort right now to see it from their viewpoint, to see it from their side, and to kind of get into their brain a little bit and see how they tick. We're going to pull the curtain back on this one, and we're going to talk about the reality of motivation. Here is the reality. Every worker is motivated by a different thing. It is true that the number one motivator is financial reward. But that said, most of your team members need something else or something in addition to the financial reward. You could see there's 7 different categories here. We are going to talk about each one of these 7 categories a little bit, and we're going to talk about what you can do to find out how that works. Simple tricks to find out what works with them, and then to give them what they need. Yes, this is on you. This is your hard work as the owner or the manager that you have to put in right now. This is not easy. It's why I said really early on in this presentation that the hard work is just starting now. You want to take a break. You want to start counting your money. Guess what? You can't do that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is financial reward. That is the number one motivator for just about everybody. And if they have other motivators, financial is still a big part of the equation. The last time I saw the numbers, 40% of all workers listed financial reward as their number one motivator. The next highest one was about 12%. So it absolutely is a very large, overwhelming consensus, but it's not the majority, and it's not the only thing you should worry about. So if you double paid people, if you've bribed people, if you gave people bonuses, all that's great and all that's necessary. But you need to start worrying about the other 6. Let's talk about those other 6. Recognition is number 2. People want to be recognized for the hard work they did. The pat on the back, the employee of the month, the plaque on the wall. Some people take so much pride in that. And that means so much more to them, because when they're putting forth a good effort, they want to know that it's being seen by others. So if you're not the huggy and the rah-rah kind of guy, you might need to either find someone to do that, or you need to become that person, because it's vital to your company. This is a very strong motivator. You need to make sure you let people know how much you appreciate their efforts and how important their efforts are to the team. It's not just enough to say, hey guys, I'm here 16 hours a day too. Nobody wants to hear that. Don't ever make it about you. You have to make it about them. At this time, one of the most important things that we can start looking at is some flexibility. In one of the companies I worked with, we realized that in order for our invoicing and collections process to keep flowing uninterrupted, We literally needed to get them out of the office. There were too many distractions. There were too many people going to them asking questions. There were too many times when people would go to them and say, "Hey, can I borrow you for an hour? Because we need somebody to answer phones, or we need somebody to help out with dispatch." So the invoicing and collections people were getting pulled in 100 directions. So part of flexibility is we told those people in our departments that they could literally work from home. Because after all, what do they do? Everything that they're doing is based on stuff that's already been submitted. So it's phone conversations, and then it's translating that information into the various programs, the CRMs or the data programs that we're using, Dash or, RM, whatever you're using. That's already being taken care of. So whether they're in the office or whether they're home, it shouldn't matter, as long as they know that they've got a certain expectations of delivering a product. So that flexibility is allowing them to do their work. And believe it or not, it's also giving them a little bit of that new mindset of I don't care if you're here. I don't want you punching a clock. I want you to be success driven as opposed to hours driven. So that flexibility really, really did help out. And that was something that they were begging for, because they were too nice to say no to people who were asking for their help. The next thing that we have to worry about and we have to be sensitive to is personal satisfaction. We want to be able to give people responsibilities where they're going to feel good about what they're doing. Personal satisfaction comes in many different forms. A salesman might be very personally satisfied when others go out and sell jobs. So maybe the salesman can't get to everything today, but they might feel great if someone else can help them out and at least go to put eyes on it. So here's what one of our companies did. We had a marketer who was a person who used to be on the production team. So they have a really strong understanding of what it looks like out in the field. So that marketer went and he told the salesman, "Hey, if you can't get to this job till tomorrow, I'll go out and I'll do an initial scope of work, and I'll even set some stabilization equipment until you can get there the next day." That teamwork gave personal satisfaction to both people, because the marketer didn't feel helpless now. They knew that they could not only do their job, which was make sure you keep talking to the lead sources, make sure you set expectations for the clients that are calling in, that it might be, 3 or 4 days before we can get to them. Not only are they doing that, but they're also helping out the cause by, in their own extra time while they're taking all those calls, going out and spending a half hour setting some air scrubbers and some dehumidifiers on projects. Those are really important steps. Both parties in that process felt personally satisfied. The same thing happens with everybody else. Set goals for people. When people know that they're meeting goals, they get a sense of personal satisfaction. In a time like this, it seems like it's a never ending cycle. Your crews feel like they're never reaching the end of that tunnel, or they're never reaching a finish line. Make sure you're not sitting there saying, "Hey, we're going to work till we're done with this surge." Within each surge, there are certain benchmarks you should be able to meet, and you should be able to let everybody know what those benchmarks are and give them the ability to say, "Hey, I did really well because I got to X, Y, and Z." So set expectations, because that allows your workers to have that personal satisfaction. That's a very important thing. The next thing that workers want and that they strive for is trustworthy leadership. In a catch, sometimes there's a lot of chaos. And in chaos, sometimes we tend to say and do things that we don't end up following through on. It just gets lost in the chaos. We might tell everybody, "Hey, no matter what, we're going to make sure you guys get a day off this week." And then all of a sudden, this week comes and we get 3 or 4 or 10 more calls. And then we're like, "Guys, as much as we wanted you guys to all have a day off to be able to recharge your batteries, we just can't afford it right now. We need to answer all these calls." I'm here to tell you that's the wrong thing. Trustworthy leadership is, no matter what, you've got to be a man of your word to your people. And if that means going back on your word to a potential client, so be it. If that means taking a job that's signed up and giving it to a competitor, so be it. You need to stand strong behind and in front of your workers. That's what leadership is. Be a person of your word. Part of that goes into the next piece, the work environment, the overall work environment that your staff faces every day. Don't be playing favorites right now, and don't overly reward or kiss butt to certain people because you feel like they're more key than others. The work environment right now has to be, I'm not saying equal, but it has to be fair for everybody. If you're going to recognize one, you have to find a way to recognize everyone else. Remember, right now, the number 20 person in your crew is just as important as the number 1 person in your crew, because the 10th job to you is just as important as the first job. At this point, you need them all done. You need them all done properly. You need them all done well, and you need to be able to invoice for all of them. So you can't be playing favorites right now, and you can't be creating a work environment that's hostile. Obviously, I don't think this needs to be said, but it goes without saying that you need to make sure that you are not a pain point. Don't be one of those guys who's constantly bitching and complaining about the state of where the company's at right now in the surge. Your workers don't want to hear that you're complaining about things. They want to know that you're recognizing everything that they're doing for you. They want to know that you're happy no matter what the end result is here. That's really hard sometimes because all the pressure's on you. I understand it. I work with the owners and managers. Workers don't necessarily get or understand or appreciate how much money it's costing for you to get this work done, how much stress you're under, all the logistics, all the balls that are in the air that you're trying to juggle. Theirs is just one of them. So you need to understand they don't know and they don't care, and you have to be aware of that. Let's make sure we're not getting ourselves caught up in a work environment that's turning what should be a great thing for everyone into something that's negative. Finally, I know this isn't something that we want to make sure we address today, but this is something that you always have to have your eye on. And it's something that when you come out of this surge, it's something that you absolutely could make sure that you're aware of and address. Career advancement is a very, very big motivator for some people. And I'll call it a negative motivator. I'll tell you that if people feel like there's not an opportunity for them to move up within your company, they're never going to give you effort. Then it all becomes about dollars and cents. And now you're in a race to the bottom, because the second that someone else, one of your competitors, is going to pay 50 cents more for your workers' efforts, they're going to run. They are not going to stay around. If you have the opportunity for them to move up within the company, and maybe in 2 or 3 years for a mitigation technician to become a supervisor or to get off a truck altogether, those are things that are going to keep them there. And even if somebody else is offering them more money, they're going to stay here because that's part of their opportunity matrix. That's what they value. So career advancement is something we always need to be aware of. And just like all the others, there are things we need to be aware of, not just during the surge, but 12 months out of the year. But the career advancement piece of it is something that we can look at right now. And we can make sure that if we have people who really stepped up and really shone during this event, we have to be able to have a talk with them soon after everything settles out to make sure that those people understand that we recognize what their efforts were, that we hope that they feel good about their efforts, and finally, that there is something further and bigger ahead for them. We have 2 helpers that, because of the nature of the business here in Atlanta, we got so much work that we turned every one of our helpers into crew leaders. So we were running 8 crews at the time of the storm. We're now running 16 crews. Every helper became a crew leader with the help of temporary labor. But 2 of those helpers have really stepped up to the plate to the point where we now are very comfortable moving them up to the crew leader position in the next 2 months. a couple of the crew leaders have performed so well that they can now move up into the supervisor role. And that's perfect for us because we're able to now use this storm surge as a means of doing the career advancement piece for our company in a way that makes it look like the more people step up when we need them, the more they get rewarded. That's going to trigger and trickle down not only to the people who are here now, that's going to carry through to new hires. That story doesn't go away. And then the next time one of these occurs, now we're going to have 16, 18, 20 people who are going to be begging for more work and more responsibility rather than begging off. That's where it's so important. All of these 7 are very important, but it's so important to understand how the long-term vision has to play into your everyday actions. And something like this is a combination of those two. So let's look at today. Here's where we are today. We're working late into the night. We've got the coffee going. We've got the pencils going. We've got stacks and stacks of paperwork, and we feel like we're never going to dig out. But let's look at today and let's make a 3-month plan. Let's say back to normal-ish, right? Because we know we can't get back to normal. There's just too many things that are still hanging on from the surge. And I'm certainly not going to be blind to that. And I'm certainly not going to be putting my head in the sand and saying, no, just get back to normal. So let's understand it's going to take a lot of time. Let's call it 3 months for everything to level out. For the next 3 months, focus on 2 separate fronts. You got to focus on getting paid for your surge work, which is finishing it up, documenting it properly, invoicing it properly, and being aggressive in getting that money, but also getting back to normal. So in this 3-month plan, it's going to feel like you're going in 2 directions and you're working twice as hard. If it feels like that, guess what? You're going to be right. That's exactly what it's going to feel like. So this is where the hard part comes. You have to make the commitment. This can't happen by you directing it and forcing others to do it. You as the owner, you as the manager have to make this commitment right now to being able to say the next 3 months are going to be the toughest 3 months I've ever dealt with in my company. Because if you are willing to do that, you will come out of this not good, but great. That dial will go to great because you will have your foot on the gas pedal, but you will have to be working twice as hard because you will be going in 2 directions. What does this look like for your other people? We'll go all the way through your company chain. We'll start with marketing. What's it look like with marketing? Your marketers now need to go back out to all their lead sources. They need to be very well educated on what leads came in during the surge and how much of that work got signed, both as a company and for their own individual lead sources. So if your company got 150 calls and you signed up 20 jobs, those numbers need to be translated to every marketer. Then each marketer should have each lead source's individual numbers. Joe's plumbing was 2 for 5. Charlie's plumbing was 1 for 2. And Henry's plumbing was 0 for 7. You need to have those numbers, good, bad, or indifferent. Don't hide the truth. What they need to do is they need to make sure they go back out to those lead sources. The first thing they need to do is they need to thank them for all their loyalty and phone calls. They need to give a brief explanation of how well the company did and then how well those numbers lined up for them. If any of the no's were because we went out and something happened and we couldn't respond and the customer found somebody else, we need to let the information flow all the way down to the lead source. Finally, we need to make that lead source understand that we are back to normal operations and that from this point forward, all calls are going to be responded to just like they were in November. That's a very important piece for the marketers. Now, you can't have them say that unless you're willing to be able to commit to that on the sales and production sides as well. So that's all part of the going into directions. From the sales side, your salesmen have to go back to being the on-call assigned people. They can't be using the excuse that they're burned out and tired or that they signed up so much work that they just want to take it easy. You've got to go back to your full response capabilities. In addition, your salesmen need to know that if there are still lead sources from the last 3 weeks that desire our services, you're going to be sprinkling those in as well at times when there's no top day or current lead sources giving us business. So maybe on a 3 o'clock on a Wednesday, when you have two salesmen and one of them is not on call, you might say to that one guy, hey, here's a lead. You're going to drive 15 minutes. You're going to go check this one out, and then you'll be done for the day. But you're going to do that. You're going to sprinkle in some old lead with some new leads. You're going to expect them to work more than just their regular 8 hours a day. Hell, you have the chance of handing them free money. This is extra money that's sitting out there. Just bend over and pick it up or just rake it in. That's what we're offering them, but you have to get them to commit. Your production teams need to be committed that not only are they still going to be wrapping up this list that's sitting on your whiteboard or on your computer of all the surge jobs that they need to get to, they're also going to have to commit that they're going to have to be on call for that 7 o'clock job that's going to come in on a Tuesday night. We've got to get back to the on-call 24/7 responsibilities. We've got to get back to getting them in buildings that are soaking wet or that have raw sewage. Those losses they've been going through for the last week or so, most of them are probably mold jobs or dried up, where there's very little extraction going on there. So, what they're doing is going to go back to being different. The other thing you might have to deal with, which is a reality, is some of your working crew members might have been on some bigger jobs if you landed a couple of commercial jobs, or maybe those working crew leaders were now acting more as supervisors, where they were in charge of a lot of paperwork, but not really doing a lot of physical work. Well, the reality is when they go back to normal, they're going back to physical work. That's a reality that you have to make sure you're ready to focus on and you're ready to have that conversation. They're probably not going to be real happy to do that. And they're going to want to beg off the top day work for the stuff that's still on the list. Don't get trapped into that. Finally, your invoicing and collections people are going to have to understand that as much effort as they're putting in to getting everything done and to trying to get that money collected from the surge, they're going to have to also make sure that your regular invoicing and collections process gets back to normal. So they might have an extra 20 or 30 jobs that they're calling about, trying to collect on from the surge, in addition to going back to normal and calling on the 20 or 30 that you're doing every month. That can't change. You are going to be going in two different directions because you're going to be focused on looking back at the surge and looking forward to today's work and tomorrow's work. You need everybody else on the team to do it as well. So the last question that remains, and it's the only question that you have to answer, is, are you ready to dial it up? Are you ready to enact your personal disaster recovery plan? Guys, if you have any questions about this or any of the webinars that Dick and I present on a monthly basis, or if you've had the opportunity to listen to some of our CREST casts on Spotify, and you have any comments, questions, or if you agree or disagree with anything, please feel free to reach out to us. Our website is www.thecrestnetwork.com. You can reach Dick at dick@thecrestnetwork.com, and you can reach me at bill@thecrestnetwork.com. Like I said, we are on Spotify. We do have a CRESTcast that is available to you. You can go on there, and it is free of charge, and there are literally dozens, if not hundreds, of archived CRESTcasts by this point, and there's new content that goes on several times a week. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope that you guys are making it through the beginning of this new year and through the surge in good order. And I hope that this was not just good for you. I hope it was great. On behalf of Dick and everybody at the CREST Network, my name is Bill Giannone. I want to say thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you on our next CREST webinar. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.